Good evening, everyone. We have been exploring the architecture of self-esteem, how it is built, how it protects us, and how it can falter. Tonight, we go deeper into one of the most emotionally precise theories in psychology, self-discrepancy theory. It explains not just that we feel bad when we fall short, but exactly what kind of bad we feel and why. But here is something crucial. A discrepancy between who we are and who we want to be is not always a distortion. Sometimes it is an honest assessment. Sometimes it is a phantom created by self-criticism. And sometimes it is the product of standards so impossibly high that no human being could ever meet them. Understanding which kind of gap you are living with can be the difference between constructive growth and chronic, unnecessary suffering. We will also explore perfectionism, the relentless pursuit of flawlessness, and how it can drive excellence or destroy health, depending on where it comes from and where it is aimed. Part 1: 3 Sources of Self-Discrepancy. When we feel the sting of falling short, it is easy to assume the problem is simple: we are not good enough. But self-discrepancy theory reveals that the same emotional pain can arise from 3 radically different sources. The gap may be real, imagined, or manufactured by standards no one could meet. Let us begin with the healthiest, though still painful, source: an honest self-appraisal. James always saw himself as a devoted family man. His ideal self is a father present at every school event, every bedtime, every important moment. But his actual self works 60-hour weeks in investment banking. Over the past year, he has missed 3 of his daughter's ballet recitals and countless family dinners. When his daughter asks, "Daddy, why are you never here?" James feels a crushing wave of sadness and disappointment. This is honest self-appraisal. James genuinely values family involvement, and he genuinely has been absent. The dejection he feels, the sadness and dissatisfaction, is not the product of distorted thinking or impossible standards. He has accurately identified a real gap between his behavior and his deeply held ideal. And this honest discrepancy does something important: it motivates constructive change. James renegotiates his work hours and commits to being present for the moments that matter. The pain is proportionate and it leads to growth. Now consider a very different source: an unrealistically low self-evaluation. Here, the actual self is far better than the person believes. A distorted, overly negative self-view creates a phantom gap where little or no real shortfall exists. Amina is the youngest person ever to become a vice president at her engineering firm. She leads a large team, has delivered several highly profitable projects, and is widely respected by colleagues. Yet her self-evaluation is strikingly low. She attributes every success to luck or to her team, never to her own ability. Her ideal self is someone who is genuinely competent and deserving of her role. Because she cannot internalize her achievements, she perceives an enormous gap between her actual self, which she sees as a fraud, and her ideal self, which she believes she is faking. This discrepancy is entirely the result of unrealistically low self-assessment. Her actual self is already the competent, effective leader she aspires to be. The gap is a cognitive distortion, not a reality. The chronic dissatisfaction and disappointment she feels, the sense that she is never quite good enough, stems from her inability to update her self-view with the abundant evidence of her worth. The emotional pain is genuine, but its foundation is a phantom. The third source is perhaps the most destructive: impossibly high self-guides. Here, the actual self is objectively adequate or even excellent, but the ideal or ought standards are set so high that no human being could consistently meet them. The perpetual shortfall generates chronic distress regardless of actual achievement. Ravi started a successful software company at 25. By 29, he employs 40 people, has a profitable business, and has been featured in industry magazines. Yet his ideal self is a legendary, world-changing visionary on the scale of a tech icon, someone worth billions, celebrated globally. He looks at his actual self, running a modest but thriving company, and feels like a profound failure. He thinks, I'm almost 30 and I'm not even close to being in the league of the greats. I'm nothing. Ravi's ideal self-guide is absurdly high. The standard he has set, becoming a billionaire industry titan before 30, is statistically almost impossible and dependent on vast external factors beyond any individual's control. His actual self is, by any reasonable measure, exceptionally successful. Yet the impossibly high self-guide ensures that he experiences only disappointment and dissatisfaction. The gap he perceives is not a reflection of his real achievements, but of a standard that was never realistic. His dejection is the product of a goal that guarantees failure. Part 2. The Architecture of Perfectionism. This third source, impossibly high self-guides, brings us directly to perfectionism. Psychologists define perfectionism as an obsession with attaining excessively high standards. But it is not a single thing. Hewitt and Flett identified 3 distinct dimensions, and they have very different consequences. Self-oriented perfectionism comes from within. The compulsive striving is internally driven. I cannot relax until it is perfect. Socially prescribed perfectionism is the perception that others have unrealistically high expectations. People expect me to succeed at everything. And other-oriented perfectionism directs unrealistic expectations outward. I expect it to be done flawlessly. Let me show you socially prescribed perfectionism through Ryan, a first-year medical student. He lives under the crushing weight of perceived expectations. He believes with absolute certainty that his parents expect him to top every exam, that his professors demand flawless clinical reasoning, and that his peers are constantly measuring him against an impossible standard. When he scores a 92% on a difficult anatomy test, one of the highest marks in the cohort, he feels not pride but a cold dread. He thinks, everyone will be disappointed. They expected me to ace this. Now they know I'm not good enough. The tragedy is that Ryan's parents are genuinely supportive. His professors have never criticized his performance, and his peers admire him. The pressure is socially prescribed entirely in his own mind. He perceives demands that do not exist, or at least not in the intensity he imagines. This gap between real and perceived expectations generates chronic anxiety. He studies obsessively, terrified of judgment. He cannot celebrate any success because every achievement is measured against the phantom of what everyone supposedly expects. His self-esteem is perpetually fragile, dependent on meeting standards that no one has actually set. Now consider other-oriented perfectionism. Marcus is a senior project manager at a logistics firm. His perfectionism is directed outward. He holds the people around him to impossibly high standards and becomes enraged when they fall short. He expects reports formatted exactly to his preference, emails answered within minutes, every task executed flawlessly on the first attempt. When a junior analyst submits a document with a minor formatting error, Marcus does not simply correct it. He calls her into his office and berates her for 10 minutes, telling her the mistake was sloppy, unprofessional, and embarrassing for the whole team. His team lives in constant anxiety. Turnover is catastrophic. In 2 years, 6 people have requested transfers out of his department. Marcus sees their departures as proof of their inadequacy, not his own unreasonableness. He tells his supervisor, "I just expect competence." Is that too much to ask? But the standards he demands are inhuman. He cannot tolerate the ordinary imperfections that come with human work, and so he crushes the morale of everyone around him. His other-oriented perfectionism has left him isolated and resented, though he remains convinced the problem lies with everyone else. Part 3. Adaptive and Maladaptive Perfectionism. Not all perfectionism destroys. The critical distinction lies in whether the striving is self-oriented and meaningful or socially prescribed and terrifying. Consider 2 young performers. Elena is a classical pianist who holds herself to ferociously high technical standards. She practices scales for hours, listens critically to her recordings, and is never quite satisfied. Yet her perfectionism is self-oriented. She chases an ideal because the pursuit feels meaningful. She can still enjoy a performance where a note was slightly off, if the emotional arc was true. The striving energizes her and deepens her artistry without destroying her self-worth. By contrast, Zara is an influencer who feels her every move is judged by an invisible, unforgiving audience. Socially prescribed perfectionism grips her. She believes her followers demand a flawless body, a perfect relationship, and an aspirational lifestyle at all times. She edits her photos obsessively, deletes any post that underperforms, and panics over a single negative comment. There is no joy in the striving, only the terror of falling short of what they expect. Zara develops panic attacks and a severe eating disorder. Her perfectionism, born entirely from perceived external demands, is profoundly maladaptive and threatens her very survival. The research is clear. Self-oriented perfectionism may be adaptive in some circumstances. Socially prescribed perfectionism is generally maladaptive and damaging to health. The difference is not in the height of the standards but in where they come from. Are they yours, or are they a prison built from imagined expectations? Part 4. When coping makes things worse. When people feel the pain of self-discrepancy, they are motivated to reduce it. But the negative emotions can sometimes backfire, leading to quick fixes that provide short-term relief while moving the person further from their goals. Safia's ideal self is a top-performing postgraduate student who stays ahead of her deadlines and produces outstanding work. Her actual self is overwhelmed by a major thesis chapter due in 2 weeks. Facing the blank page, she feels acute anxiety and self-doubt. To escape the discomfort, she opens a streaming service and tells herself she will watch just 1 episode to clear her head. 6 hours later, she has finished an entire season. The binge-watching numbed the anxiety in the moment, but now the deadline is a day closer, and she has made no progress. The next day, the anxiety returns even stronger, and she is tempted to escape again. The quick fix of avoidance has moved her directly away from her academic goals, deepening the original self-discrepancy. The relief was an illusion. The consequence is a wider gap and a heavier burden. Part 5. Perfectionistic Self-Presentation. Perfectionism does not only shape how we strive, it shapes how we present ourselves to others. Perfectionistic self-presentation involves proclaiming successes while concealing weaknesses or mistakes. And it is powerfully linked to eating disorders, particularly when combined with body dissatisfaction. Jasmine is a fitness influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers. Her feed is a stream of perfect images: flat stomach, glowing skin, colorful smoothie bowls, and motivational captions about discipline and self-love. She proclaims her successes relentlessly: every personal best in the gym, every day she ate clean, every compliment she receives on her physique. What she conceals is the reality behind the photos. Jasmine binge eats in secret, then forces herself to vomit. She counts every calorie, punishes herself with excessive cardio after a perceived slip, and stands in front of the mirror pinching at her skin with disgust. Her perfectionistic self-presentation is directly linked to her bulimia. The need to appear flawless to her audience, to embody the ideal of health, beauty, and control, drives her to hide the very behaviors that are destroying her. She cannot admit to struggling because her brand is built on perfection. The gap between the curated self and the suffering private self widens daily, and the shame of being found out fuels the cycle of binging and purging. Her body dissatisfaction, amplified by constant comparison to her own edited images, keeps her trapped in an illness she feels she must never reveal. What we take with us. The gaps in our lives are not all the same. Some are honest and generative. James looked at his absence from his daughter's life and changed. Some are phantoms. Amina was already the leader she aspired to be, but could not see it. And some are prisons built from impossible standards. Ravi was wildly successful by any reasonable measure, but his ideal self was a mirage that guaranteed misery. Perfectionism can be an engine or a trap. The difference lies in whether the standards are internally chosen and meaningful or externally imposed and terrifying. Elena the pianist and Zara the influencer both set high bars, but one was nourished and the other was devoured. And when we feel the pull to escape the pain of our gaps, to binge-watch, to avoid, to numb, we must recognize the pattern for what it is, a short-term relief that widens the very gap we are fleeing. The only way out is through. So, examine your own discrepancies. When you feel the ache of falling short, ask yourself, is this gap real? Is my self-assessment honest, or am I underestimating who I have become? Are my standards challenging but achievable, or are they impossibly high? And if you recognize the signature of socially prescribed perfectionism, the constant anxious sense that others demand flawlessness, remember Ryan, who was haunted by expectations no one actually held. Ask yourself whether the judgment you fear is real, or whether you have built a prison from shadows. The goal is not to eliminate all gaps. The goal is to close the ones that are real, release the ones that are phantoms, and dismantle the ones that are impossible. That is the difference between striving and suffering, between growth and despair. Thank you.